Hello and welcome to episode number 27 of WP Café with me, Keith Devon.
And with me, Mark Wilkinson. Hello there, Keith. How are you this week?
I'm all right. How are you doing? Well, I'm not. I've got a very, very sore back. I've got
Dear.
that very middle-aged affliction and
Will you
tall
bend
person
over?
affliction. Yeah.
Bend over to pick up a feather and your back goes.
It was picking a raspberry, so pretty close to picking up a feather. Yeah.
Obviously far heavier than a feather, but
and that's gonna probably put me out for the next I don't know month and a bit or more. Yeah, pretty bad. So luckily I've got my standing desk because I'm actually generally okay. Sitting down and going from sitting to standing is excruciating. So standing up is okay. I've just got tired legs today. But apart from that, how are you doing?
Oh dear. I'm all right. I'm not so bad. Plodding along.
Good.
Just back from holiday, which is getting into the swing of things again, which takes a little time. But yeah, plodding through the mountains of emails that you have to. Spent the first day doing that. I spent the first day literally doing nothing or what seemed like nothing, just literally replying to emails, jumping into conversations where necessary, and then replying again to replies that you get from those. And it just takes a few days to get through it. But I think we're getting somewhere now. My inbox is now down to just like one page on my screen rather than multiple pages. So fingers crossed, I will back in shape soon.
Yeah, your inbox is usually a pretty busy place, isn't it?
It is
all that product stuff.
It is.
We've had just a comment there from Adam Warner. Hi, Adam. He said our audio sounds a little bit off to start with. Can anyone else confirm that it still sounds bad or that it's a bit better? I've just checked my audio settings, but we will continue because this is a live show. We will crack on anyway. And hi, Ross, as well. Sorry for scaring you with my intro. Don't know what part of that was so terrifying, but there you go. So thanks for joining us. Whoever's joining us here live today, we'll do our best to answer any questions that you have along the way. But we have 3 thrilling topics to discuss today. The first, well, I don't know which order you want to do these in, Mark, but we've got clients ruining designs, controversial.
Yeah.
Blocks versus metadata, and reselling custom functionality.
I think we should go for that one first.
It's a controversial episode today, I would say. We're hitting the hot topics. Okay, so reselling functionality. I will give a little intro to this topic. So we recently released a plugin that we're hoping to sell. And this plugin was in part based on some work we did for a client. Said client saw the plugin release and was very, very nice about it, but essentially said something along the lines of, we might want to commission work from you in the future that you cannot resell like this. And I just thought that was a kind of interesting discussion point. I think, Mark, we both kind of agree on this topic, but give me your thoughts.
I think from the client's point of view, first of all, I can sort of empathize with the probable reasons why they want to do that. And I think there's 2 reasons. The first is that they want competitive advantage over their competitors. And if you are going to sell products to multiple competitors that you've developed for them, then I can understand that might be a worry as such. That happens all the time, though. But anyway, we'll come back to that. And the second reason, I would guess, is because they may feel as though they're funding development that is going to be distributed cheaper to other people in the form of a productized service. And I can understand that as well. But again, I think that probably happens all the time, in that we build something for someone and learn something, and then we do it for someone else, and it's easier. So if we charge the same for our initial design, our initial work as we did back 10 years ago, we'd be millionaires now because we'd be charging so much for websites. That has to be the case. So I think those are the 2 reasons why that's a worry to them. But we were just chatting about the sort of the logistics of how that would actually work. Because for a start, WordPress is open source, so any code we actually write is open source in its nature because it's building on top of an open source project. So you can't really copyright that or whatever the correct legal terminology is. You can some of it. Is it that the JavaScript and CSS could potentially be? There's different rules and regs for different languages and things in the WordPress project, but essentially you can't sort of do that. Now you can do that by distribution as such, as in you don't give it to anyone, no one can get hold of it, if that makes sense. But there's no, as far as I'm aware, no way to sort of like copyright your work in WordPress because of the open source nature of the product. And then there's also the what legally defines what we have written for a particular product or plugin, for example, for this product. You know, like if the plugin includes the underscore title, does that mean we can't use that ever again? Well, that's ridiculous. That can't be the case. So there's always going to be things in there that you can, and will definitely use in the future. It's somewhere else. So defining what is unsellable or unreusable, no, it is. How do you ever do that? And that's what I think we came to the conclusion that even though you may agree that's the case, how do you go about that legally? It's just a minefield.
Yeah, absolutely. So my kind of take on it was that I did feel slightly like I totally sympathized, like you said. I felt slightly icky about it. Like whenever he raised it, I was just like, oh yeah, it felt uncomfortable, and maybe that means that that's the sign that it shouldn't be done. But it definitely did feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like I wasn't totally just like, no, we're right. We were totally 100% fine to do that. There was definitely a question mark there, which worries me. But like, I don't know what we should have done. Like, the other interesting dynamic with this particular use case is at the very same time that we were developing this for our client, we had surveyed our job relay clients, and this was the number one functionality request from that survey, like completely independently of each other. So we probably would have done this anyway.
Because they met in the middle, didn't they? These two things. The request, the request from the client may have come first. I'm not sure, but essentially they came at the same time as these requests. And how you'd ever say, it was our research that brought this idea, or it was the client's idea, is very different, very difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was part of our research and part of the client request as well. And the product that we have delivered for our client is actually, although the end result is very similar, the code and the way in which the client goes about delivering this particular service is very different in terms of the solution.
Yeah. So I'd be really interested to hear what our viewers / listeners think of this. If you're watching along live, what are your thoughts? If you're watching this after it was recorded, you could stick something in the comments. We'll do our best to respond. I'd be really, really interested to hear what people think about this. If you're listening on the podcast, you can find us on Twitter at Keith Devon or at WP Mark. So yeah, I don't know. So what are we going to do going forward, Mark? Like, does this change anything? Like, if you could go back in time, would you have done anything differently? Would you have said, actually, no, we shouldn't launch this product? Like, does it change anything for you at all going forward?
No, not for me. I think I'd have to. Ross has just commented, my contract wasn't run through a solicitor, but it's clear about reuse. And I'd have to check our terms and conditions again. But I think there is something in there about us, learning on the job and using what we learn in the future. And I think that's standard. That's you can't get away from that. You can't unlearn what you've learned and never use it again. So it's really difficult. So yeah, I don't think much changes for me really. We need to inform the client of well, I think we informed the client and they were very good about it again, and we'll have a chat about it. But we can't really work like that. So yeah, that's the nature of it, I think, really.
It is. Yeah, I wonder if even like if there's something like you could do it on some kind of delay. I mean, the fact is as well, like we're not selling very many of our plugin at the minute. It's not as if like the whole market now has access to this functionality. It is pretty niche, pretty bespoke, and not like high volume stuff. So it's not like their competitive advantage has been wiped out, like, and it won't be anytime soon. And the other thing is, this functionality is kind of out there already, and any of their competitors could commission a developer to do it at any point anyway. So it's, I don't know. And yes, we might be making things easier for them, but yeah.
And our solution, our plugin that we've launched, is automating a manual process that you could do anyway. So someone could be doing this manually, taking more time, obviously, but still gaining that competitive advantage that that they don't want someone else to have. And they can't stop the complaint doing it that way, can they? So I think that's how that
carry on.
Falls.
Interestingly, they did say they might look at using another development partner that would give them that guarantee for certain specific bits of work. See how that works out. All right, interesting one though.
I think Sam's comment here was, what if a client took your job relay plugin and went to a freelancer to get updates and avoid the subscription costs? Just to play devil's advocate. I don't think they could do that because Job Relay is a service and the service runs through us. So if you don't pay, you don't use the service. That's how it works. So the actual Job Relay plugin, I can give it to anybody. It doesn't really matter because it runs through our service anyway.
Yep, that's right. It's not like having a subscription for Gravity Forms.
Correct. Gravity Forms will still work if you don't have a subscription, but you won't be able to get updates and support. It's not like that. It's a bit different.
Yep, exactly. All right. Interesting one. So, I think that's probably enough on that. But like I say, interesting to hear people's thoughts in the comments. And thanks for those who've commented on that.
Sorry, just to clarify that, I'm just trying to think about it. It's more like a subscription service to an image compression service. So we use Imagify. So you can download the plugin off WordPress.org for free, but it literally doesn't do anything unless you have a license key to run your images through their service to compress them.
Yeah.
It's a very similar model to that.
Yeah, exactly. What do you want to tackle next, Mark? Clients ruining designs or blocks versus meta?
I picked the first one, so you can pick the next one.
Let's do blocks versus meta. Let's see what we think about this. Okay, so this comes from a question, and I've lost. No, I haven't. From Tobias Schwartz. So he listened to our previous episode where Mark was away, where I was talking to Frank Klein about full site editing for agencies. And in the YouTube comments, he wrote, and this is long, so bear with me. Something I find relevant for the kind of WordPress projects you refer to seems to be blocks versus custom posts with metadata as small as data units. Anything that needs to be queried will need to be saved to the post, not the block. If I have a lot of custom post types that require lots of meta input that needs to be queried somewhere else, if that custom post type has a single view, I can see a marginal benefit of graphic editing. But apart from that, and in this case, one would have to write a post type block that serves as form input and saves to post meta, which, correct me if I'm wrong, cannot currently be done with ACF blocks without hacky stuff. And I'd need probably to write a custom query block for all the post meta needed on the post type archive page. Whew. How would you go about this in an FSE, full site editing, environment, or just not do it yet? End.
That was a long question. I think I kind of get the idea of what he's talking about, though. You might tell me wrong. Was it Tobias? Sorry, it was
Tobias Schwartz. Yeah,
Tobias.
Yeah.
So we if you take the idea, we built you built actually, not me. It was a long time ago. A sort of an accommodation site for student accommodation. So it was about essentially properties as a post type, wasn't it? And then you could categorize properties into flats, houses, whatever.
Yeah, number of rooms, all kinds of stuff like that.
Number of rooms. So you've got all this data associated with these properties, and you want to query by that data. So you want the user on the front end to be able to say, show me all of the Bristol properties that are 3 bedrooms that are flats, something like that. So if that data only exists in blocks in the post content, you could do it, But from my understanding, that query would be very, very difficult to do. You'd essentially have to get all of the properties, start looping through them and grabbing the ones that match the data. It would be very tricky. However, you might well want to give the user some control over how they output that data on the single property page. You might want to let them lay out that page and display the number of rooms slightly differently to another property. So then that makes sense that they are actually available as a block to say number of rooms block or whatever, and you're showing that on the page. So I think what Tobias was trying to say is that in the back end of WordPress in blocks, you can't add something as a block for visual display and save it as metadata or terms in a custom taxonomy that you can actually then use to query things with. And it was asking what our solution was, and I don't actually think we have a solution for that. I think in that instance, I probably wouldn't use blocks. This would be the solution.
Exactly.
I would just use meta fields and have them output in a set way. And if you look at most of the web for that example, like properties, you don't jump onto rightmove.co.uk here in the UK and the property pages look different. They all kind of look the same, don't they? They have the gallery in the same place, they have the title in the same place, they have the number of rooms in the same place, because it's kind of more structured than a block-based layout. So I think that is probably a good example of where you wouldn't want to use blocks, I think.
Can you not use them in a kind of hybrid manner? So you have blocks so if, for example, we're talking about properties again, you've got a lot of metadata, like we talked about, like, it could be location, it could be number of rooms, it could be price, it could be like any number of things.
Yeah.
But then you might want to write like a description of the property, which is quite rich in terms of its formatting and with image galleries and videos and all that kind of stuff. So in that case, you'd want to use some kind of hybrid, presumably. That'd be all right, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So you could output the title, the data about the property that we've just said, and then underneath that is a block area. Go nuts.
Yeah.
Do what you want in there. And then you could start to have like block patterns where you can have to keep it sort of on brand and so forth. But yeah, that would work.
It is possible though to, well, correct me if I'm wrong, to save block data to the database, but is that different than saving, like, updating a taxonomy? Is it not possible? Maybe not with core blocks at the moment, but with custom blocks, can't you do that?
I think it is possible with custom blocks to save as metadata. So one would assume potentially you could save to terms in a taxonomy.
Yeah.
Tobias was specifically asking about ACF blocks, which is what we use.
Yes.
I have seen some code snippets that have attempted to do this on like the save post hook, but there was a lot of people saying it didn't really work very well, and so they've had a lot of updates since then. Maybe that's something they're working on. Fingers crossed. Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, interesting to hear if anyone has done anything like that or had any kind of success like that. Yeah, because what could potentially be nice in that very specific example, I'm thinking of the website actually and how that metadata was displayed on the front end, and I had like a key info panel for each property, and in that panel it had like the price and the university that it was associated with and all that kind of stuff. And I could imagine that being a custom block. So you input the data there, on the page, but then that is saved as like either metadata or taxonomy
that would be
data.
Fine, but
yeah.
I'm not. So that allows you to move all of that data around the page together.
Yeah, I know.
But it doesn't allow you to put different pieces of that, to split it into different places on the page, does it?
That's true, but then, would you really want to be doing that? But yeah, it is interesting. Like, we had these conversations right at the start of the Gutenberg project where we were like, well, how is this going to possibly work for this type of project and that type of project? And it was these kinds of use cases that we were talking about at the time, and I don't think it's really been solved. There's certainly some. Yeah,
I watched back last week's episode, obviously with Frank, and I think he said in the podcast, correct me if I'm wrong, along the lines of, you do what's right for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if blocks isn't right for you, then don't use them. It's fine. If full site editing isn't right for you, then don't use them. It's fine. Use a hybrid approach. So it might be in this instance that, and I don't know what Tobias's custom post type is. We're obviously just using this as an example. in that instance, like, let's just not use blocks here. Let's just turn them off and use the normal sort of editing screen or the old style editing screen and fill in some information, or use the hybrid approach, like you said.
Yeah, okay,
makes sense.
Well, I hope that went some way to answering Tobias's question. If anyone else has a question like that, please do get in touch. We love to take questions. It gives us interesting things to talk about. So just before we move on to our final topic of the day, if you're enjoying this and you want more content like this, you can subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube, where you can get all the live shows and interact with us like during the show, which is always really fun for us. Or you can subscribe on your favorite podcast player and get all the content directly into your headphones at some point. So please consider doing that if you're enjoying, and give us a like if you don't want to subscribe. A like is really cool for us as well. It really helps.
You could also ring that notification bell as well.
Oh, the notification bell. Yeah. All right, on to our final topic of the day, unless we get any questions that we want to cover.
Ross has got.
We'll come back to Ross. Clients ruining designs. I'll let you introduce this one, Mark.
Yeah. So this has happened more than once. I mean, let's be honest. And I would put money that people watching and listening have had this problem as well, where you've got the design for a project, you build it, so you okay it, the client okays it, everything's rosy, you build it, and it looks great. And then these creeping in starts, can we just change this? Can we, the colour, I'm not so sure. And then 3 weeks go past as well when nothing's happened. It's like, well, we're not quite sure. We've seen this other website now, and it looks a bit better than our sort of case studies page. And, we want it to change it to that. And 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks later, the design has just gone all horrible, because it's been ripped apart, torn apart, and it just doesn't work together anymore. And you find yourself really demotivated on the project, and you kind of just want to throw it in the bin and start again, because that's kind of what it needs. And that's like, we had one of these recently, and that's kind of what sparked this topic. And I think this question comes from, because we always sit back and think, well, this has happened. Why have we allowed this to happen? Like, we've been doing this for decades. Like, how have we got into this position where this has happened again? And that's kind of where this topic came up from. Not necessarily that this has happened for the first time, if that makes sense. It was more, it's happened again, and we've let it happen again. What have we done wrong? How did this happen?
Exactly, and I think that's the right approach to take. It's not the clients from hell approach, where this client's awful, yada yada yada. I mean, certain clients maybe get the process more than others, and like are kind of they'll go along with the process. They'll understand it. They won't kind of like rock the boat like right at the end kind of thing. Like, they just have a better understanding of how design and development works. But we don't always work with people like that. So it's definitely down to us to try to control this and prevent it happening, because it hasn't been a particularly fun experience for either side. I don't think, because obviously we started pushing back on things and saying, no, you can't just rip up a design, halfway through the project and start again, at least not for free. So it hasn't been fun. So what went wrong, Mark? Like, what? Well, I don't know. What can we do?
For me, in this particular instance, there was the person we were dealing with, and then there was a person that I think we spoke to once or twice, which is essentially the boss. They were the ones that kept sort of, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? And there was no sort of gatekeeping or anything. It was always put to us as ideas. And then I think at that point is where we need to learn and just say no, or we need to speak to this person that's got all these ideas so we can get across our philosophy of why this isn't the best idea, or why it might be the best idea if that's what the case is. But I think that's kind of where it fell apart a little bit in this particular instance. And it happens sometimes as well in other projects. But projects that work well are where you have like one person who is filtering out the sort of the ideas and things like that. You know what I mean? And maybe that needs to be us in some projects. But for it to be us, the client's got to be happy with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
That
does
we
make sense.
are the gatekeepers. And sometimes they don't like that, I think.
Yeah, I think with this example, we don't know how much gatekeeping has gone on. Like this person that we're talking about might have been doing an awful lot of work trying to keep the boss on track, but she's having to let some stuff through just to kind of keep him happy and keep her job to some extent. So I do have some sympathy because we don't really know what the situation is like internally.
Absolutely.
We can only see what we see.
But I think that's where we need to jump in and say, look, we need to speak to the boss to really understand what it is that he wants and feels and so forth.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's secondhand news, and that just doesn't sometimes work,
Yeah, and it means we can't justify our decisions directly to someone and have that conversation. Say, okay, that's your idea. Let's dig into why you have that idea. Let's come up with a solution here and now. Everything's like going through this other person's Chinese whispers kind of situation, and it's slow and it's painful. And if we could get him on the calls, that would really, really help. But also, I think from the outset, we left this particular project was a lot more open and flexible than the way we normally do things. It was just like, we'll build you a website. We'll just keep working on it until it's finished.
Well, it wasn't quite that open, but it was more open than our usual projects for sure, definitely.
Yeah,
and that's something to learn from, isn't it?
That is something to learn from for sure. Like, we didn't define the process and the time scales and when things are kind of like done, and we should have.
Yeah. Sam's just said it. Yeah, there's some more comments which we'll come back to as well. But in hindsight, were you speaking to the real decision maker throughout? And no, we weren't. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So what's Janice say here? I'm going to stick it on screen without even reading it first. I have staged payments for project work, sign off after design agreed, and payment triggered for build stage. Yep. If client attempts to dig up the foundations after design agreed, then that incurs charges. And that's effectively what we've done. It's just getting to that has been a little bit painful. But yeah, I mean, it's
definitely worth saying here. The client is not expecting to pay for these changes. They are expecting to pay for them. So that's fine. It's not kind of the fact that we're not going to get paid for them, because we are. It's just that I'm not sure the end product will be as good as it would have been if none of this have happened. I hope it will. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. We've got a way forward now, which is good.
I want to take one more kind of question before Ross's. We'll leave on a lighthearted note with Ross's questions. This is from Andrew. So, Andrew Jones, thanks for the question, Andrew. I feel WordPress is almost becoming developer hostile in terms of trying to cater to end users and chasing Squarespace, Wix, Webflow, etc. And just to follow up to that, he says, I just read they'll be making WebP images standard in 6.1 without making it opt-in. Do you feel like WordPress is alienating developers with each new release? Yes.
I think, as a developer, probably yes, it feels like that. But ultimately, WordPress isn't written for developers, is it? So I think that's what you've got to just remind yourself of, really. It's not written for us. It never was written for us. It was written to democratize publishing. So therefore, if that's what's happening and it's working, then it's meeting its aim, isn't it? So we can kick our toys out the pram all we like, and actually they're probably doing quite a lot of good stuff for developers, but probably different developers to what I am.
Maybe
because I'm an old school WordPress PHP person, and it's kind of moving. So
it depends who you're talking about too. When you talk about WordPress, like, who are you talking about? There's a lot of people trying to do a lot of good work. There's people working hard on documentation. I hate the documentation. Like, I think it's really poor, but there's a lot of very clever people putting in a lot of good work, trying their best. So no, not everyone is attempting to make this a developer hostile place, but I think, to Mark's point, and if you've listened to us before, Andrew, you'll know that we generally kind of agree with you, but we've kind of like just come to the conclusion that the developers are the second-class citizen, the users are the first-class citizen in this case, and we've kind of come to terms with that to some extent. It's very frustrating, but I think that is the way it is.
Yes.
Final question from Ross. How are the bats? Ross, I don't know. I've been away for the weekend and I haven't been outside on an evening to see if they're still there, but I'm guessing that they have left this roost because of the ridiculous heat recently and found somewhere a little bit more temperate to live for the rest of the summer. That's what happened last summer. They upped and left. So I don't. There's certainly none flying around my living room right now or the last couple of evenings, which has been nice. But yeah, but hopefully I'll keep everyone up to date with bats. Don't worry if they come back when we build our new bat boxes and things. So yeah. But yeah, I don't think they're here at the minute, but I'll have to have a check. I'll have a look out this evening.
Cool.
All good?
All
Wrap
good.
it up?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us live on YouTube and for listening. If you've listened on the podcast, really appreciate it. Again, if you haven't already, give us a subscribe, give us a like. They really do help us out. And if you have any questions that you want to raise as part of these podcasts, we're always interested in getting questions from people. You can either tweet us on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, at Keith Devon, at WP Mark, or we're at WP Café Show for questions, or stick them in the comments of these videos and we will try and include them in some of the episodes. But for now, thanks for listening and we will see you again sometime next week, probably.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.